Good morning, West Virginia. Schuyler Callihan here with Mountain Eers Now. This is another episode of Between the Ears, and we have got some movement as the second player from the WVU men's basketball team has entered the transfer portal. That is Kerr Kriisa. Not really much of a shock. He did walk on senior day, and along with a few others. This just kind of feels like decision week, really, for the guys that are on the roster. They've got a few visits set up for some of the guys in the transfer portal now that they're targeting. So it really feels like this is a week where they're really trying to get answers on the guys that are currently there and kind of move forward with what they have and the knowledge that they have from that and go to the portal. So Kerr Kriisa leaving after 1 year. Like I said, no surprise. Played well, I think, for the most part, given the circumstances, but I don't think he ever had a chance to really flourish and really become the player that most West Virginia fans probably anticipated him to become, mainly because of the depth issues, the personnel issues. I mean, even though he missed the first 9 games, when he came back, those first few games, it's going to take a little while for him to get his legs back, to get back into game shape, really understand his teammates on the floor. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, people don't realize, even though you practice every day with these guys, until you actually go out and play in a game setting, an actual live game, that's when you start to really gain knowledge and information on your teammates, because you really don't know when you're on the big stage or you're playing against someone who doesn't really know you as well or may play you differently. That's kind of how you find out who's good at what and who isn't good at what. So it took Kerr and I think a lot of really everybody, a few games to really kind of settle in. And then once Raekwon and Noah Farrakhan came in, they had to resettle in again. So it was just a nonstop learning environment, I think, for Kerr Kriisa. And that's pretty much what it was going to be next year anyways. And it's going to be the same whether he goes, overseas or whether he were to transfer. Regardless, he's going to have to relearn a lot of things in terms of playbook, his teammates, and so on and so forth. But I think it's a smart move for Kerr because he's a veteran. He's got 1 year left, and there's no guarantee that Darren DeVries, although he's going to be successful at some point in time here in Morgantown, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen in 24 and 25, where they get to the tournament and they can make a run. I think it would greatly benefit Kerr to go somewhere that has a long history of getting into the NCAA tournament, that needs a guard badly. And one of the first places that pops into my mind is North Carolina. They're going to need some guard help. I don't know if they're even interested or going to be interested, if he'd even be interested in going there. But that's one place. There's many others, but I could see him kind of landing at a blue blood. And he's played at a big time programs before. He played at Arizona, West Virginia, so it's not unrealistic by any means. But I do think he needs to play one more year in college before really testing out the market overseas, or really even in the G League. I think if he puts together a really solid 24-25 season, he could maybe find a way to get onto a G League roster. And then from there, who knows? So it's taking it one step at a time for him. Obviously, you're going to miss the creativity. You're going to miss the ball movement. You're going to miss the fiery passion that he brings. His three-point shooting, which I think was a pleasant surprise, which he's always been a decent three-point shooter. But I think in which the volume he actually ended up shooting, remember early in the year, they were kind of nudging him saying, hey, you got to take more shots. You got to be a little bit more selfish. And I was kind of concerned of how that would affect his efficiency, and it really didn't. So hats off to him for that. But you're going to miss a good player in Kerr Kriisa. There's no doubt about that. The good thing about this is, in the portal world that we now live in, when you lose a guy like that, you can get another guy like that. So I think Darren's going to find somebody that fits this team well. And I think it's going to be somebody that, in terms of the point guard position, and it's going to be somebody that has multiple years of eligibility, because as I said before, you can't go out and just get a bunch of Band-Aids because you're going to be right back in the same situation as you were this year. You have one high school kid signed, Carmelo Atkins. That's not going to get it done. This is going to be probably a 2-year process where it's going to be a roster heavily dependent on transfers until that first real true wave of high school kids come in. And even then, it's still going to take a little bit of time for them to groom, develop, mature, and really be somebody that you can count on. So it might even be 3 years before we see kind of that group or that cluster of high school kids make it to West Virginia, develop, and then can be counted on. So it's going to be a little bit of a process. But I do like the guys that they're contacting in the portal. They've got some guys they've reached out to from Drake. There's some other, mid-major guys that they're looking at. I haven't seen, and I could be wrong on this, I haven't seen a high major in terms of quote unquote, as we like to say in football, on the football side of things, Power Five. But that will happen. I do believe that will happen at some point. Now, will they land somebody from that level? Who knows? We'll have to see who they contact, who they get visits with. But there's a lot that's going to go down here in the next 10 to 12 days. So we've got Seth Wilson in the portal, which I think is a good move for him too. You got Kerr Kriisa in the portal. Now that leaves you down to what? Let's see. Noah Farrakhan, Josiah Harris, Aiden Tagovailoa Nelson, depending on whether he's going to stick to being a two-sport guy or not. You have Ali Ragab, who is a walk-on. You have Kobe Johnson, and Pat Sumnick was kind of up in the air if he was going to come back. Quinn Slazinski, I believe, can get another year, but he's not. From what I've learned, he's probably not coming back. So this is going to be a very, very different looking roster, and that's okay. And I think that's really the biggest kind of point to this whole episode today is just because these guys enter the portal. Like in years past, a guy like Kerr, when if he would enter the portal, it would be a doomsday scenario situation. Oh my gosh, we just lost this big time player to the portal. How in the heck are we ever going to replace him? That's not how this should be viewed. This is a good thing for Kerr. I think it's a good thing for Darren. He can go in and bring in his type of guys because I don't know what Darren really envisions with this roster. He kind of laid into it a little bit, but we don't really know until we start to see that first group of players start to come in and you start to see the similar traits. But I don't think this is a panic situation. This was all going to happen. And some of those guys I just named, they may be entering the portal too. So don't freak out. Don't panic. There's no use in doing that. It's year one. There's going to be a lot of change. Anytime there's coaching changes happen. So I think first and foremost, he's got to get his staff set, start reaching out to some players, which he's already done. I think we'll probably hear on the staff officially probably sometime this week. I would say probably by Friday. My guess is just saying by Friday, but maybe it's not till Monday. But it's coming around the corner. So once they get that set in place, they can be full steam ahead, which I'm sure they're already kind of communicating back and forth between each other and kind of targeting and identifying certain guys in the portal that they like. So not the end of the world by any means. It's going to happen. It's going to get crazy here in the next 10 to 12 days. So buckle up and get ready. It's going to get really crazy really fast. So that's going to do it for me here today on Between Ears. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Mountaineers Now. Give us a thumbs up as well. Then go over to X and follow us at that same handle. Make sure to check back in tomorrow morning for another episode of Between Ears.